Welcome back. Welcome to the Premier Mindset by Premier Performance LLC. I'm your host, Trent Mailer, LCSW, licensed clinical therapist and performance coach, and this is episode 36. Most people think control is what leads to success, that if you can manage every variable, every emotion, every outcome, you'll win. But that's not the whole picture. The truth is, control comes with a cost. When you build your success on control, you also build tension, burnout, and fear of failure. High performers often don't realize that the very thing driving their results is the same thing quietly draining them. That need for control shows up everywhere. When you can't delegate because no one will do it right, when you overthink every move instead of trusting your instincts, or when rest feels like weakness because slowing down means losing grip. What's really happening isn't discipline, it's fear disguised as productivity. The harder you try to control everything, the more you disconnect from flow, creativity, and composure, the exact states that fuel real excellence. Today, we're breaking down the cost of control, why high performers struggle to let it go, how control gives the illusion of safety but limits growth, and what it actually looks like to perform at your highest level without gripping so tight. You'll learn how to replace control with confidence, precision, and presence, so you can thrive under pressure instead of being ruled by it. Quick note before we dive in, this podcast is for education and performance growth. It's not a replacement for therapy or medical treatment. If you need something, make sure you go get it. I want you guys to get the help you need. This is just to spread awareness and point you guys in a direction, but make sure you still get what you need. You can watch full episodes on YouTube, Spotify, and the audio-only version on Apple Podcasts. I'll also be sharing clips across Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and X on a daily basis, so hit subscribe or follow to get involved and catch every drop of new content as it comes out and as we continue to build these communities. All the links to all the social media accounts are in the show notes, and all the ways to contact me are in the show notes as well as at the end of the episode. If you've ever felt like your drive for control is the thing that's keeping you from your best performance, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. What is control? In this context, control manifests as excessive oversight, like managers constantly checking and rechecking work that should be delegated. It's a lack of delegation, an unwillingness to entrust tasks or decision-making authority to subordinates or anyone else that you're working with. Obsession with detail, focusing on minute details rather than strategic outcomes, getting so lost in the weeds that we're missing the bigger picture. Centralized decision-making, meaning that all decisions, no matter how small, must go through the manager, creating a bottleneck. These over-controlling behaviors introduce significant negative costs and consequences. One of those is the illusion of control. It feels safe, but it actually limits growth. The illusion of control is a cognitive bias where individuals overestimate their ability to influence events or outcomes that they objectively have little to no control over. This bias creates a powerful but ultimately false sense of safety and security, which actively limits personal, professional, and organizational growth. Here's how the illusion of control feels safe yet restricts growth. The feeling of safety derived from the bias stems from a psychological need for predictability and mastery over one's environment. Believing one can control outcomes reduces uncertainty and anxiety about the future. It makes the world feel more manageable and less random, which sounds great. It just doesn't work. It also reinforces a person's sense of competence and effectiveness. A manager who believes they control every variable might feel more secure in their position and decision-making. And key word in there is feel. Just because you feel more secure doesn't actually change the situation you're in. And if we need to create security for you, that is something we can do. It does not have to be something we trick ourselves into feeling. We don't have to, kind of gaslight ourselves. We can't just create that sense of security, and doing it through control isn't going to help you get there. Acknowledging the inherent unpredictability of situations can be uncomfortable. The illusion allows individuals to bypass the anxiety of uncertainty and feel protected. So you're kind of ignoring the fact that this uncertainty or instability in life is there. And again, we can try and pretend these things don't exist. We can put our head in the sand and ignore it. it's not going to help you because these things will still hit you right in the face when you're not expecting it, and you won't even be able to prepare for it or see it coming because you're so caught up trying to pretend it's not a thing. No one likes unpredictability, instability, all of these kind of things. No one likes feeling things are out of control. That's normal. We all feel that. All humans feel that. But we have to deal with it the right way, and there are ways to deal with it that are going to help us be successful and not just live life out of fear. And if you've done that before, if you've lived life out of fear before, you have felt this, it is exhausting. It is incredibly hard to keep doing it day in and day out because you're constantly on edge, and it takes so much emotional energy to stay there. So let's talk a little bit about the difference between control and composure, because these things are very related, but they're very different at the same time too. While they are related concepts, control and composure, especially in high pressure environments, refer to distinct aspects of human behavior and management. Control involves the ability to manage, direct, influence, or manipulate variables, systems, people, or events to achieve a desired outcome or objective. It is active and outcome-oriented. It usually has something to do with external controls, such as managing resources, people, and processes to meet the organizational goals, like controlling a budget, managing project deadlines, or it can deal with internal control, which is more self-control related. That could be regulating one's own impulses, behaviors, and actions that align with the long-term goals, such as controlling the urge to interrupt somebody. Key aspects of control are really about action and influence. It aims to ensure that actual performance meets planned performance. So we have this idea in our mind, and we're trying to control as many things as possible to make it become that thing without something going wrong. On the other hand, composure is very different. Composure is an internal emotional state of being calm, steady, and self-possessed, particularly under stress, pressure, or duress. It is a state of mind that enables rational thinking and effective performance despite challenging circumstances. One aspect of that is emotional stability. We need to maintain emotional equilibrium when facing setbacks or crises, and if we can hold composure, we're able to do that. We can manage the emotions we're feeling using that emotion regulation that we've talked about before in a past episode to help ourselves navigate that world without it causing a crisis or without it causing an impulsive reaction. Presence of mind is big too. The ability to think clearly and make sound decisions despite internal anxiety or external chaos is huge. And there's a lot of people that are very successful at what they do because they're really good at this, that they can keep things clear and make the decision they need to make when everything's falling apart around them. Key aspects of composure are really focused on state and stability. It allows an individual to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. So while there is some similarities and they can both show up at the same time, both control and composure, control is really about focusing on things going on around you and trying to create a world that looks like the inner world in your mind, where composure is about how we're dealing with things and what we do when things are going wrong, how we hold ourselves, how we carry ourselves, how we deal with the situation. How over-control leads to anxiety, burnout, and decision fatigue. Over-control, particularly when it manifests as perfectionism or micromanagement, creates a perpetual cycle of stress that directly leads to anxiety, burnout, and decision fatigue in both the person exerting the control and those being controlled. Perfectionism and control are deeply intertwined in a self-reinforcing cycle, with the need for control ultimately serving as a symptom of underlying fear. The pursuit of perfection is a strategy to prevent perceived negative outcomes, making control the primary mechanism by which the strategy is executed. Over-control fuels anxiety through the illusion of control, which tends to clash with reality because we typically don't actually have the control we think we do or we want to have. One of those things that comes up with that is the unpredictability of reality. The desire for absolute control constantly bumps up against the inherent unpredictability of life and business. This gap between the desire for control and the reality of uncertainty creates persistent anxiety. Life's always going to be unpredictable. I mean, think about it. If it was possible to control things in these ways, what that would mean, if we take it far enough, is that someone could essentially tell the future. They know exactly what's going to happen. They know how it's going to go. They know how people are going to react. And because of that, they can control all of these variables and make sure it goes exactly how they want it to go. And I don't know about you guys. I don't think that's a thing. I don't think that exists. I don't think any of us knows what the future holds. I think some people make some really good guesses. I think some people really have a good way of seeing the future and the patterns that lead to things, for sure. But actually knowing the future, I don't know if anyone actually has that yet. So keep that in mind. Things are going to be unpredictable. Things are going to go wrong. And as much as we'd like to control that, we can't. A fear of failure. A major driver of overcontrol is a deep fear of failure or negative outcomes. Think of how many times you've tried to avoid something because you were worried of how it was going to go. This happens all the time. It's super common. To avoid this perceived threat, the individual hyper-focuses on every detail, maintaining a constant state of high alert that mimics a fight or flight response. And it feels good because it feels like you're being proactive and that you're doing things to keep yourself safe. But really what you're doing is you're staying busy, and a lot of the work you're actually doing is pulling you away from the desired outcome, and it's making things harder. We just don't look at it that way. We look at that illusion of control. The chronic stress response ends up getting involved as well with all of this because you end up sitting under threat for so long. The constant vigilance required to monitor every variable keeps the nervous system activated. This chronic stress is a direct pathway to generalized anxiety, panic attacks, and physical stress symptoms. So it can start creating more and more problems for us the longer we sit in it. And just because we can sit in something for a certain amount of time doesn't mean we should keep doing it. There's a lot of things we can do for short periods of time. But if we continue to do it, things will break down. And part of that is due to the physiological cost of control. These things impact our stress hormones, our sleep, and it creates chronic tension. The constant demand for control, often an attempt to manage uncertainty and a deep-seated fear of failure, imposes a significant physiological cost on the body. This continuous striving for mastery activates the body's stress response system, leading to a cascade of negative health consequences like elevated stress hormones, severe sleep disruption, and chronic physical tension. The drive to maintain absolute control keeps the body in a prolonged state of fight or flight, triggering the HPA axis, or the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. The adrenal, or epinephrine, is the immediate response to perceived threats, or the fear of losing control in this sense. What happens is we start releasing adrenaline, which causes a rapid heart rate, increased blood pressure, and a burst of energy. In healthy individuals, this response is temporary. In those exerting over control, it is frequently activated throughout the day and can slowly break things down. And while, just to clarify, it's called adrenaline, it is also referred to as epinephrine. Epinephrine is just talking about where in the body it comes from. There's two places in our body adrenaline can come from. Based on where it comes from, it changes the name of it. Continuing on with that. When stress becomes chronic, the adrenal glands continuously pump out cortisol. While cortisol is vital in short bursts, we need it, persistently high levels have detrimental effects. Chronic cortisol suppresses immune function, making individuals more susceptible to illness, infections, and inflammation. So with this stress, you can get sick more often. Think about that in your life. The people that have been stressed out all the time, how often do they get sick? It can also increase blood sugar levels. This contributes to weight gain, especially around the abdomen, and raises the risk of type 2 diabetes. So that blood sugar rise creates a lot of problems. We've got to be aware of that. High cortisol levels contribute to chronic high blood pressure and an increased risk of heart disease and stroke. So again, sitting in this stress, holding on to this and trying to control everything in your life to avoid it is not going to help you, and you are setting your body up to break down and have failures. This next one's a big one that people talk about a lot, and they don't tend to connect it to mental health, but oftentimes I have found it is very connected, more connected than we want it to be, which is sleep and insomnia. The on switch of the stress response is difficult to turn off. This directly interferes with sleep architecture. One of the things that causes a lot of issues is racing thoughts or rumination. The mind of an over-controller often cannot disengage. They stay worrying about unfinished tasks, potential mistakes, or planning the next day to keep the brain highly active, preventing the onset of sleep. We can't turn it off. We can't relax. We can't rest. This continues to lead to cortisol rhythm disruption. Cortisol levels are naturally high in the morning to wake you up and low at night to allow sleep. Chronic stress disrupts this rhythm, leading to high cortisol levels in the evening that makes falling asleep or staying asleep difficult. One way I like to say it in session with clients that I'm working with is that if you're having an issue with something getting in the way of falling asleep, there's probably stress going on in your life that's causing that. Stress, anxiety, something that's there that's causing that. If you are having issues waking up a bunch through the night, it's probably related to trauma. And these are big generalizations. These are not forever answers or answers for every situation. But from the patterns I've seen, based on what type of issue you're having with sleep, whether it's falling asleep or staying asleep, tends to point to what is actually in the way. So if you are having issues falling asleep, consider what's going on in your life that's causing stress or anxiety. If you are finding yourself waking up a lot through the night, consider asking yourself if there's trauma there that you need to deal with that you haven't yet. Continuing on, another aspect of that is a lack of relaxation. The inability to let go means the mind and body never fully relax, even in a resting position. This prevents the deep restorative sleep necessary for physical and cognitive repair. You can get 8 hours of sleep and have it not be restful, and it doesn't change much. Some of you have probably felt that, where you would get a lot of sleep time-wise, but you wake up feeling exhausted. Sometimes it's not about just the amount of sleep, it's about how we are sleeping. And there are things we can do to increase this stuff. If you're having issue with sleep, let me know. I can help give you some pretty quick answers and fixes to it. So going further with that brain threat response, this system gets really activated when control feels lost, because control is the goal here. So the second we recognize we don't have control, this system gets activated. We get the fight, flight, freeze, fawn patterns. When an individual perceives a loss of control, the brain's threat response system is immediately activated. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, interprets the uncertainty and the lack of predictability as a significant danger. This response bypasses rational thought and triggers one of the four primary, often subconscious survival patterns: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We have a fifth one of faint, but it's a little more rare, it doesn't happen as often, but it's still there. These responses are designed for acute physical threats. So they're meant for like a tiger in front of me, or a bear, or someone trying to attack me. But in modern contexts, they are triggered by psychological and social threats such as fear of failure, job loss, or loss of status, which is how a lot of these things change, because the system is built for direct acute threats, but it gets triggered by all of these other things that can stick with us for weeks or months or years. There's also a huge connection between control and shame. It usually creates ideas of, if I can manage everything, I won't fail. The core connection between control and shame is a deeply rooted defense mechanism. The intense need to control every aspect of life is a protective shield against the exposure of inadequacy of failure, which triggers the profoundly painful emotion of shame. The underlying belief that drives this connection is, if I can manage everything perfectly, I won't fail, and if I don't fail, I won't experience the unbearable pain of shame. This is how we create fear cycles that we get stuck in, where we're continuing to do things out of fear. Shame is fundamentally different from guilt, and understanding the difference between guilt and shame is very important. Guilt is, I did something bad, focuses on behavior, where shame is, I am bad, focuses on self-worth or identity. If we connect it to shame, you're going to beat yourself up every day. You're just going to. It's going to happen. Shame is corrosive. It tears things down. Guilt works a lot better. Oftentimes people kind of talk themselves into shame because they don't want to just give themselves the pass and accept they need to work on it, because they feel like they won't learn from it. Like they have to punish themselves. I can't even count how many people I've talked to that have struggled with this, where they say like they feel like it's not good enough to just look at it as guilt, that they have to almost beat themselves up. Otherwise, it doesn't fit with what they did. Like they didn't punish themselves enough. They won't learn from it enough. They'll do it again in the future, whatever reasoning they want to give me. But it's usually the same dynamic of having a hard time being able to just focus on the behavior and being so caught up wrapping it into identity and self-worth and who we are as a person. Shame is an intensely painful feeling of being unworthy, inadequate, or fundamentally flawed, often driven by the fear of rejection or not belonging. And it's so deep-seated because that tribalism aspect of needing to fit into the tribe was such a big part of our survival thousands, if not hundreds of years ago. So we had to figure out ways to do it, where today we can kind of find our own tribes or do our own thing and still be very successful. Because shame feels so toxic and damaging to the self, individuals will go to extreme lengths to avoid situations that might trigger it. And this is a lot of other emotions too. People will go very far to not feel things they don't want to feel. The hard thing is, if you try and get away from these emotions, they will just come back up later in some way, and it will usually cause more pain. Another aspect of control that causes issues is how it kills adaptability and flow states. And adaptability and flow states are very important to finding success in what you're doing. The rigid pursuit of control fundamentally conflicts with both adaptability and flow states, which are essential for high performance, creativity, and resilience. Adaptability is the ability to adjust to new conditions, pivot strategies, and thrive in a dynamic or changing environment. Control, with its emphasis on predictability and adherence to rigid plans, is the antithesis of this. Control fosters rigidity, a commitment to a predefined plan or outcome. Adaptability requires flexibility and a willingness to abandon a failing plan in favor of a new, more effective approach, which works better at these higher levels because things are going to go wrong and we have to adapt. If any of you own your own business, you are very familiar with this. Things go wrong, and they go wrong all the time, sometimes at an annoying rate. If you're working at high levels where there's a lot of money on the line or, a lot of assets, whatever it might be, maybe just a lot of pressure, things are going to go wrong. And again, we're going to have to be able to work with it because the second something goes wrong, if that panics you, you're not going to find success. You're going to be dealing with that threat response. People seeking excessive control with uncertainty, viewing changes in the environment as threats that must be eliminated. Adaptive individuals accept uncertainty as a constant and focus on responsive action. So we don't want to look for the excessive control. We want to adapt and move with things. You kind of want to be water. You want to just flow around what's happening. And it's not saying don't hold boundaries or don't stand up for things that you need or want, anything like that. There's a lot of different times that's important and a lot of different ways to do that. But we can't just be stuck in rigidity of it's supposed to go this way and it's not going this way and now I'm going to lose my mind. A need for control can cause individuals to ignore or dismiss information that contradicts their existing plans or belief systems, creates a confirmation bias. So we can actually write things off and walk ourselves into traps or problems because we're not willing to accept that maybe we're wrong. Adaptability requires an open mind and a willingness to integrate new information or data, even if it disrupts the current strategy. So naturally, adaptability sets you up to be more willing to receive information that's going to help you be successful with what you're doing and what's going on. In an organizational context, an over-controlled system with micromanagement slows down decision-making. Adaptability requires fast, decentralized responses to changing conditions, which is impossible under rigid control. So even in organizations, as scary as it is to let people do their thing, if we can let people have that room and delegate and give them the chance to adapt, things can go a whole lot better. Sometimes we got to make sure we have the right people for the job. That is a fact that we got to think about and be wary of. But especially if we have good people that are talented and know what they're doing, we have to give them that trust and see what happens. And trust is scary. It's a leap of faith. I know it is. It always is. Whether it's business or relationships, trust will always be a leap of faith. But sometimes the best thing we can do is just leap. Now let's talk about why high performers often mistake control for discipline, because this happens a lot. Because both concepts lead to highly structured behaviors and goal attainment, which are hallmarks of success. However, their underlying motivations and long-term consequences are vastly different. So there are similarities, but there are big differences as well. The confusion happens due to a few different factors. The confusion is understandable because the external appearance of control and discipline can look very similar. Structured routines, adherence to schedules, and consistent effort. Another aspect is shared behaviors. Both a highly controlled person and a highly disciplined person might wake up at 5 a.m., exercise, and follow a strict work schedule. The difference lies entirely in why they do it. This one is so hard, and this is where the confusion comes in, because they look very much the same. It's about the internal with a lot of this. On one hand, we have success as validation. High performers achieve success through these structured behaviors. They may mistakenly conclude that their success is because of their need for control rather than the underlying discipline component of those behaviors. The fundamental difference is about motivation. On one side, we have fear, that's the control side, while on the other side, we have purpose, that's the discipline side. Control is a reactive strategy to manage fear or avoid a negative consequence, such as I must follow this plan perfectly to avoid failure and shame. Discipline is a proactive strategy aligned with a positive purpose or values, such as I commit to this plan because it helps me achieve my long-term goal of running a marathon. Discipline is usually more long-term based. Control is more short-term. Control is how do I avoid this thing I don't want to feel. Discipline is more how do I do the thing I don't want to do right now so I can have the thing I want later. Going further with flexibility and adaptability. Control is rigid. A control-oriented person struggles when plans change or obstacles arise, as this signals a loss of control. Keep an eye out for this. You might see people that really start having big reactions or big emotional reactions or outbursts when things change, when things don't go as planned. Some of this is due to feeling safe in control. Sometimes it's other things. Sometimes people aren't good with flexibility. Sometimes it's about what happened and it's more of a boundary. Discipline, on the other hand, is adaptable. A disciplined person can adjust their approach or schedule when faced with an obstacle, maintaining commitment to the ultimate goal while adapting the method to overcome it. Instead of running through a wall, you figure a way to go over it, go around it, and you can keep going. While you don't deal with that wall directly, sometimes we don't need to. Sometimes the goal is more focused on the long term. Talking about the long term versus short term, control leads to negative physiological and psychological costs that we discussed earlier, like anxiety, burnout, decision fatigue, and then all the body emotions that go, body feelings and sensations that go with that. And it's unsustainable, which is why it's more short term. Discipline is a freeing and sustainable practice that fosters resilience, builds self-trust, and allows for growth and true peak performance, such as flow states, which is what our goal here at Premier Performance is all about, is getting you into these positions to enter these flow states as much as possible. As hard as it might be, and as difficult as it is, sometimes we got to reflect honestly and call ourselves out. Are what you're doing actually control, or is it actually discipline? Be honest with yourself. If it's actually control, let's change it. Get away from the fear and get toward the positive and building something sustainable. We need the discipline. We need to hold ourselves to things. There's times we're going to need to do things we don't want to do, but there are ways to do it in good, productive ways. There's a paradox within all this that we got to be aware of too, which is the tighter you grip, the less effective you become. This is a central truth in high performance, whether it's psychology or management. It highlights how an excessive need for control and underlying tension ultimately undermines the very performance and outcomes they aim to guarantee. This principle manifests across several dimensions. Like we talked about, we got the physiological stiffening. On a physical level, the paradox is literal. We have the muscle tension. When we grip tightly, like physically or mentally, our muscles literally tense up. If you're feeling really stressed out, you probably feel the tension in your body. It leads to a loss of flow. Peak physical performance requires fluidity and a lack of conscious, rigid control. A tight grip prevents that natural synchronicity of mind and body required for optimal execution. And it creates psychological rigidity. Mentally gripping tightly equates to overthinking, fear, and a lack of flexibility. This is why analysis paralysis happens. The intense focus on controlling every variable prevents spontaneous, intuitive decision-making. The mind becomes bogged down in details and fear of mistakes, leading to reactions that slow and missed opportunities. Going further, it stifles creativity. Creative problem-solving requires a relaxed state of mind and the ability to connect disparate thoughts where they're kind of bouncing all over the place and connect lines. A tight grip engages the analytical conscious brain, shutting down the expansive subconscious thinking necessary for innovation. And as we talked about, it reduces adaptability. Rigidity prevents a person from pivoting when faced with inevitable curveballs of life and work by clinging to a single plan or outcome. They become brittle and unable to adapt to changing circumstances. The ultimate paradox of high performance. Mastery actually comes from letting go. While achieving competence requires focused effort, discipline, and intentional control, reaching the very highest levels of performance, that peak premier performance, which is true mastery, it requires the surrender of that rigid control. This counterintuitive wisdom is a central theme in psychology, sports, arts, and leadership. The tighter you grip, the less effective you become. And this is why we do this work, because it's very confusing work. Sometimes it feels literally backwards. Of doing all these things up to this point helped me get here, but now those things are not helping me move forward and they're actually getting in my way. That can be really confusing, and that's why there's so many paradoxes that pop up with high performance and why it's so hard for people to reach it, because it's not just this logical plane people can reach. You have to actually navigate it in a successful way to get there, and that's not easy, and that's why so few people get there. But that's the work we're doing. We're trying to get more people to that point. So we're going to sidetrack a little bit and dive into some evolutionary aspects of it, along with some existential conversations about why humans crave control. The human craving for control is deeply wired in our psychology, stemming from both evolutionary survival mechanisms and profound existential needs. This need for control is not just a modern anxiety, but a fundamental aspect of human existence. It's rooted evolutionarily in survival and prediction. From an evolutionary perspective, the need for control is a hardwired survival mechanism that gave our ancestors an adaptive advantage that helped them survive. The ability to predict the environment was crucial for survival. Early humans who could predict weather patterns, animal migration, or the behavior of predators were more likely to find food, avoid danger, and pass on their genes. Control, therefore, developed as a drive to predict and manage the environment to increase safety. It also leads to a sense of agency. The belief that our actions can influence outcomes, which is a sense of agency, is motivating. It encourages goal setting, planning, taking action, which are all vital for survival and adaptation. It can also help with safety and resource management. The feeling of control over resources like food, shelter, and safety reduces immediate physiological stress. In a world of scarcity, control provided security, and that's what life was as hunter-gatherers. We did not have enough. We were trying to scavenge and get by literally every day. It also impacts the threat detection and response system. Our brains are finely tuned to detect threats. Uncertainty is often interpreted as a potential threat because it means we cannot plan or protect ourselves effectively. The drive to regain control is simply the brain attempting to return to a state of safety, to a state that we know. We prefer the pain that we know than the possibility of pain from the unknown. We will actively choose to take on pain, even if there is uncertainty the pain could stop, because the uncertainty itself feels painful. And this control shows up in athletes too. It just shows up a little differently. It shows up with rituals and routines and pre-game rigidity or the fear of mistakes. In high-stakes sports environments, control shows up in athletes as a range of behaviors aimed at minimizing uncertainty and ensuring that peak performance. These behaviors were often labeled as discipline because, again, control and discipline look very much the same. It's about why we're doing it, are frequently rooted in fear and anxiety about making mistakes or failing to meet expectations. So here's how control typically manifests in athletes. We get rituals and superstitions, which is the illusion of influence. Athletes often develop highly specific pregame rituals and superstitions, which serve as mechanisms to create a sense of control over random or external factors. An example of this would be wearing the same lucky socks, performing a specific sequence of actions before every free throw, or listening to the same song before a game. These actions are not based on logic, but on the belief that a specific routine can influence the outcome of an inherently unpredictable event. The ritual provides comfort and the sense of mastery over anxiety, even though it offers no actual control over the game itself. You also see this with pre-game rigidity, sticking to the plan. A need for control can manifest as an intense, rigid adherence to a pre-game plan or routine where deviation is perceived as a threat to performance. An example could be eating the same exact meal at the exact same time for weeks before every game, refusing to talk to anyone immediately before the event, or a highly structured warm-up that must be performed in a specific order. This rigidity provides psychological safety and predictability. Any disruption to the routine can cause significant anxiety and perceived loss of control, potentially derailing the performance altogether. And usually it all ties together with the fear of mistakes and negative outcomes, which is why we're doing these things, to try and limit them or control them. At the core of these control behaviors is often a deep-seated fear of failure or criticism. The pursuit of perfect execution in every play or movement tends to lead to problems. Mistakes are seen as catastrophic and unacceptable rather than a normal part of the learning process, which gets in our way and causes more and more issues because we'll never be able to be perfect at anything. Another aspect of this is overthinking and choking. A high control mindset often leads to analysis paralysis during performance. Instead of allowing intuitive automatic movements to flow, like the flow state, the athlete becomes stuck in their conscious mind, overthinking every action and even choking under pressure, which is kind of that freeze response, depending on how they're choking, of course. It shows up as well with entrepreneurs and leaders, usually in micromanagement, overscheduling, and not delegating, as we talked about before. In entrepreneurs and leaders, the need for control is often a double-edged sword. While initial drive and meticulous attention to detail can fuel a startup success, this need frequently crosses the line into maladaptive behaviors as the business grows, manifesting as micromanagement, overscheduling, and an inability to delegate. These behaviors are typically rooted in fear, a lack of trust, and the belief that only the leader is capable of the required quality or level of output, as though we can't trust anyone else to do it. Going further with micromanagement, or the illusion of oversight, micromanagement is perhaps the most visible sign of a leader's need for control. It is an intense focus on small details and processes rather than on the big pictures and outcomes. You can even see this in relationship. Needing to control others' reactions or outcomes to feel safe. The need to control others' outcomes or reactions in relationships happens because the person engaging the behavior is using control as a defense mechanism against their own internal fear, anxiety, and deep-seated insecurity. They are attempting to create an external environment that feels predictable and safe because their internal world feels unstable or vulnerable. Think about it in your own life. If you've ever been told or you ever have the thought that you might be controlling in relationships, this might be why. You might be trying to control things to keep yourself feeling safe in a naturally vulnerable situation, such as a relationship, because in relationships we can get hurt. Decision-making under uncertainty. When control collapses, and how to adapt. When control collapses, either due to external crises or the realization that outcomes are beyond our influence, we are forced into a state of decision-making under uncertainty. The key to navigating this is not to attempt to reestablish rigid control, but to adapt to a new mindset that embraces the uncertainty and focuses on resilience and response. Here are strategies for adapting and making effective decisions when control collapses. First, acknowledge and accept the loss of control. The first step is to shift from fighting the situation to accepting reality. Move from how do I fix this and get back to normal to how do I navigate this new reality effectively. Then focus on the controllables. Acknowledge what you cannot control, external events, other people's reaction, and pivot all energy to what you can control, your own reactions, effort, attitude, and immediate next steps. Then embrace vulnerability. Accept that being in control was an illusion anyways. This reduces the cognitive dissonance and shame associated with failure of control mechanisms. And we want to do things internally, like maintain composure. As discussed earlier, while external control may collapse, internal composure is essential for rational decision-making. This can help when we regulate the nervous system. We can use techniques like deep breathing, grounding exercises, or mindfulness to calm the physiological stress response so we have the ability to make the decision we need to and take action on them in the moment as well. We can also stretch the gap. which is creating a moment between the trigger, the collapse of control, and the response. This allows the prefrontal cortex, or the rational brain, to come back online and prevent an impulsive, fear-driven reaction where we can now choose a response that works best for us instead of reacting to a situation in a way that usually leads to longer-term problems. And if we can adopt an agile decision-making framework, it will help in the long term. Traditional long-term planning falls apart under uncertainty. A more agile approach is needed. To do this, we got to prioritize ruthlessly. Focus only on the most critical priorities that ensure immediate safety, stability, or survival. Defer non-essential decisions. We're not going to be able to get to it all. We got to decide what we can get to work on those things, and then either delegate or push off the things that we can't get to right now. Iterative decisions. Test and learn. Make short-term decisions based on the best available information, acknowledging they may need adjustment tomorrow. Use a test, measure, learn, adapt cycle rather than trying to find the single perfect solution. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, and you're never going to see all of the possible side effects that are going to come from any change or decision. So with that, we just got to get started, try things out, measure it, see what changed, learn from it, what did this cause, and then adapt again. Maybe it worked and we can keep going, maybe it didn't work and we got to change up right now. But trying to wait for that perfect solution is never going to happen, and you're just going to delay longer and longer and longer. We also want to gather diverse perspectives. Uncertainty is best managed with multiple viewpoints. When feeling out of control, involve trusted advisors and team members to get a broader perspective and challenge your assumptions. Don't get caught up in tunnel vision just looking at things in one way. Talk to people you trust and see if this is actually a good way to look at it or if we might need to change it up. And we want to focus on resilience and learning. The goal is no longer to prevent failure, which is impossible, but to learn from it and bounce back quickly. We want to fail fast and learn faster. Reframe mistakes as essential data points for adaptation, rather than catastrophic events that trigger shame and the need for control. We want to build redundancy and flexibility. Design systems and processes with flexibility in mind, knowing that control mechanisms might fail. Cultivate a growth mindset. View the period of uncertainty as an opportunity for new learning, innovation, and growth that could not happen within a rigid, controlled environment. When control collapses, the illusion is broken. The opportunities to shift from fragile, rigid control to robust, resilient adaptability, which is the true path to sustainable high performance. When control collapses, the illusion of safety shatters, forcing individuals to confront uncertainty directly. Effective decision-making in this state requires a deliberate shift in mindset and strategy, moving from a rigid, control-based approach to an adaptive, flexible, and responsive one. So when things go wrong, that's okay. Let's just move with it. Let's learn as we go. Let's not get stuck. That's not going to lead to anything good. Now let's talk a little bit about the cost of control and leadership specifically and how it stifles team creativity and trust. And leadership and overemphasis on control incurs a significant cost, primarily by severely stifling team creativity and eroding trust. What might seem like a way to guarantee quality or mitigate risk actually undermines the very psychological safety and autonomy required for a high-performing, innovative team. Trust is the foundation of effective teamwork. Control operates on the opposite principle, which is suspicion. Micromanagement and the need to control every detail sends a clear message. I don't trust you to do your job correctly. And while that may not be the message we're trying to put out there, that's the message people are receiving when we do the micromanagement. This immediate breach of trust makes employees feel undervalued and disrespected. Trust involves giving people the freedom to own their work and make decisions. Control involves taking that freedom away. When leaders refuse to delegate, they are hoarding trust, which prevents it from building autonomy within the team dynamics, and the team will suffer because of it. Psychological safety is the belief that one can speak up, make mistakes, or take risks without the fear of punishment or humiliation. A control-oriented environment driven by the fear of making errors destroys the safety net, leading people to self-censor and avoid risk. This is one thing that I dealt with a lot in college, is just the way they would coach things on the football team at times. A lot of things were coached in terms of control or punishment or humiliation. And not all of it and not all of them, but there were times that that was taken advantage of. One thing that comes to mind was when they would do this thing called the tape, where the whole team would be in the room together and they'd show on the film, whether it was practice or games, mistakes people were making. And it wasn't just hey, this is wrong, we need to fix it. Sometimes it was. But a lot of it was just yelling and screaming at people in front of the whole team. And even if someone wanted to try and explain what they were doing or why they did it, it would usually be met with more anger and more yelling of, I'm not asking you to say that, or being defensive or explaining it away, no excuses, that kind of thing. It was more of like, just take this thing, like just take me yelling at you. And because of that, I think people did self-censor. They would hold certain things back. I think people would avoid taking risks. I think there was times people wouldn't go out there and put themselves in positions because of that. And it created a culture of fear. And I don't think everyone dealt with it exactly the same way. You've got a lot of different people dealing with things in a lot of different ways. But I know for me, it did cause me to shut down and be a little more reserved with what I was doing, because it felt like if I made things or I did something wrong, it was going to be put on a spotlight in front of everyone to see at any time. And it did scare me. When things inevitably go wrong, the focus in a high control environment is on assigning blame rather than solving the problem. This fear-based culture makes trust impossible to maintain, and it leads to things falling apart very easily because things are built on a very fragile structure. Control undermines collaboration and connection due to a few different factors. The pursuit of control fundamentally undermines collaboration and genuine human connection because both requires a degree of vulnerability, trust, and shared power that is incompatible with the rigid demands of a controlling mindset. Effective collaboration is a process of shared creation, where ideas are freely exchanged and power is distributed among team members. It needs to feel like a team, like an equal basis. Control operates as a solo pursuit of a predefined outcome, which destroys the collaborative spirit and becomes much more of one person leading and everyone else following. This can lead to an emotional toll of holding it all together as a leader. The emotional toll of holding it all together as a leader is immense and often hidden. This expectation, whether self-imposed or organizational, requires a constant performance of strength, infallibility, and control. This heavy burden, a consequence of suppressing vulnerability and emotion, leads to chronic stress, isolation, burnout, and significant mental health challenges. You don't have to do it alone. This is what we help with at Premier Performance. We're going to help you offload so you can unload and can do your thing where you're at, whether it's in business, at your job, on the field, on the court, or anywhere else. You don't need to hold all these things together all on your own. And there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of things to be scared of, especially as you go higher in the world. You're going to have more and more imposter syndrome. It's just going to grow with you. And there will be more consequences to not dealing with these things if you don't. And it's not like something to be scared of. It's just reality. And that's why we're doing what we're doing here at Premier Performance and with the Premier Mindset. It's trying to build you guys up to understand these things and set yourself up for success, but to also help you navigate these waters in a way that's effective and efficient, and it works. So if you're not sure where to go or what to do with these things, reach out, let us know, and we're going to work with you and set you up with a good plan that's going to help you be successful in the exact situation you are in. So going further into this, when high standards turn into self-sabotage. High standards are generally a positive trait associated with high achievement. However, they turn into a form of self-sabotage when they morph into maladaptive perfectionism, which is typically unrealistic, has rigid demands accompanied by harsh self-criticism. This transition happens when the pursuit of excellence shifts from healthy ambition to a fear-driven attempt to avoid failure and shame. It's another piece that can grow with us as we go higher in the world. So we're just worried more and more about falling and less about what we've built. Control and identity, when performance becomes self-worth. The connection between control and identity is profound. When an individual's sense of self-worth becomes directly contingent on their performance and achievements, control becomes the primary mechanism for sustaining that identity. In this scenario, I am what I achieve means if I achieve perfectly, I am worthy. If I fail, I am worthless. This link often forms early in life, where love, approval, and acceptance are conditioned on achievements like grades, sports, behavior. As a result, self-worth is externalized. A healthy identity is based on inherent worth as a human being. When identity is based on performance, self-worth is externalized and constantly dependent on the external metrics of success. And this is why so much goes back to our childhood, because of how our childhood is set up. You have grades, you have school, you have sports, you have trophies, you have things you're being asked to do. Did you do your chores? Did you not? Did you do your homework? All these things. And it's very easy to start connecting that if I didn't do what I needed to do, I failed. Something's wrong with me. I'm broken. I should feel bad. And that's why it's so easy, like we talked about earlier with guilt versus shame, to fall into that shame category, because it's much harder to actually look at it accurately and accept that this is just something I need to work on. The human doing versus the human being. The person shifts from human being to a human doing, where their value is measured by their output, efficiency, and success. So if you're going to focus on what you're doing, you are more of a human doing versus a human being, which is just who you are as a person, just being a person, that you just desire that worth and that acceptance as you are, and you don't have to do anything to get it. Like, love and acceptance isn't conditional. It could just be there. It's unconditional. Control as the guardian of the identity. Control becomes the vital guardian of this fragile performance-based identity. If control can ensure perfect performance, then the identity, and thus self-worth, remains intact. At the end of the day, real confidence comes from trust, not control. Real confidence stems not from the rigid, fear-based need for control, but from a foundation of genuine trust. Trust in oneself, in others, and in the process itself. Control creates an illusion of competence, while trust builds authentic, lasting confidence. Learning to tolerate uncertainty is a skill. This one's huge, and it's really important because uncertainty is going to be a thing, and we can try and avoid it, try and control it, we can try and manage it, or we can just get good at dealing with it. Tolerating uncertainty is a critical psychological skill, not a personality trait, that can be developed and strengthened over time. In a fast-paced, unpredictable world, learning this skill is essential for managing anxiety, improving decision-making, fostering adaptability, and moving beyond the need for rigid control. So even if you've noticed that you do control more than you think or more than you want, that's okay. It can be a tough realization, but let's do these things and get to work on it and make it better. Learning to tolerate uncertainty involves shifting mindset and behavior through practice. We're going to have to do it over and over again. We want to acknowledge and externalize uncertainty. That's the mindset shift. So accept the reality. Acknowledge that uncertainty is a constant and an inherent part of life. Trying to eliminate it is a futile battle, and you're never going to win. Normalize the feeling. Recognize the feeling. Recognize that feeling anxious about uncertainty is normal, but the response to that feeling, like controlling behavior or avoidance, is what needs to change. The feeling is fine. It's about what we do with it. Same with anger. Anger is a big one. Feeling anger is totally fine. What you do with it matters. If I'm going to feel the anger and then go to the gym and I'm going to come back and just keep doing some things around the house and all is good, great. Sounds great to me. If you are going to feel anger and then go punch your window and break it, that's going to be a problem. That's going to cause a lot of different issues for you. So we got to be aware of what we're doing with the feelings we feel. The feeling is okay. It's about what we do with it that matters. We want to challenge negative beliefs. When uncertain situations arise, question your assumptions, such as what is the likelihood the worst case scenario will happen? Or can I cope even if the worst happens? Is certainty even possible here? Asking yourself these type of things can help us reframe and refocus on what we need to do now. Continuing on with that, we can focus on the present. Uncertainty is about the future. Practice mindfulness and focus on what is happening right now. Focus energy on what you can control in the current moment. Even if you're worried about something that could happen 15 minutes from now, that is still 15 minutes from now. Let's talk about what's happening right now in front of us. The more you can say in the present, the better. Reframe mistakes. View errors as data points for learning, not as catastrophes. This reduces the fear of negative outcomes, which is why we do it. And we had a whole episode on this where we talked about handling setbacks and failures. So when things do go wrong, that's okay. It's going to happen. We just got to deal with it and keep on moving again. And then we can do some things behaviorally to help, like gradual exposure. You want to deliberately place yourself in situations with small, manageable levels of uncertainty. Start small, like eating at a new restaurant without checking the menu first, and gradually work up to bigger challenges. This builds tolerance and confidence and helps you handle things more. We are really good at adapting as humans. We just need to put ourselves into positions to adapt. So try and put yourself into these spots. Don't go too big too fast. It will be too much, but we want to stay with something manageable and build up that confidence until we can keep going. We also want to practice imperfect action. Make decisions with 80% of the information instead of waiting for the 100%. This breaks the habit of analysis paralysis and builds comfort with acting despite ambiguity. Things are going to go wrong. There's going to be times we don't know what to do. This is how we get things going. This is how we get things moving. We have to make decisions sometimes without all the information. It's going to happen. We also want to consciously stop engaging in behaviors that provide us a false sense of control. And the reason for that is we got to stop reinforcing these things that aren't actually helping us. But to do that means we have to reflect honestly with ourselves and tell ourselves what's working and what's not, such as stop checking emails after work hours or delegating a task and resisting the urge to micromanage. So we want to reduce those controlling behaviors and just let some things happen. Tolerating uncertainty is a skill that takes consistent practice, but it is key to unlocking adaptability, reducing stress, and leading a more confident and resilient life. Learning to tolerate uncertainty is a crucial skill for emotional resilience, effective decision-making, adaptability, and high performance. It transforms uncertainty from a paralyzing threat into a manageable constant. The skill is developed through constant, deliberate practice and shifts in cognitive and behavioral patterns. There's a lot of different therapy styles that work at doing this stuff, and there's a lot of different ways to go about it as well. Again, if you're not sure how to do it, not sure how to get started, just reach out to me, let me know, I will help you do it. Letting go is a form of high-level performance mastery. In many fields, particularly those requiring adaptability, creativity, and nuanced execution, the ultimate sign of high-level performance mastery is the ability to let go. This paradoxical wisdom suggests that ceding rigid control is precisely what unlocks peak potential and sustainable excellence. Letting go as mastery involves a shift from conscious, effortful control to an intuitive, trusting, and adaptable approach. It's a shift from doing to being. Mastery is achieved when the foundational skills are so ingrained that conscious thought becomes hindrance, from conscious competence to unconscious competence. Beginners and intermediates require conscious control and rigid focus to execute a skill correctly. Think about tying your shoe for the first time. You had to really think about it the whole time you're doing it. The master has practiced so much that the skill is automatic. Think about yourself tying your shoe now. You're not thinking about what you're doing, you just do it. That's just being versus doing. The mastery is not in thinking and letting the skill just flow. This is going to help us enter more flow state. As discussed earlier, the flow state, the peak of performance, is characterized by a loss of self-consciousness and the sense of effortless action. This state cannot be forced or controlled. You cannot put yourself in the state through action and control. You have to get into the state by putting yourself in the right mindset, in the right situation, and then it takes over. It only occurs when the individual lets go of their rigid self-monitoring ego and trusts their training, trusts their body, trusts themselves. The other aspect of control is we typically end up in an identity crisis when control no longer works. When it no longer works, a crisis hits, a significant failure occurs, or reality asserts its inherent unpredictability, and it triggers a profound identity crisis. For those whose self-worth and identity were built on the shaky foundation of perfect performance and rigid control, the collapse of control means the collapse of who they are. This is the moment the human doing confronts the reality of the human being. When things go wrong, and they will, they can shatter things, it can change things, it can completely change how we view ourselves. That's not bad that happens. The bad thing is when we do nothing about it. So if you have any of these things tied together, work on it now. Don't wait for things to break before you have to fix it. This stuff is very common in athletes. It's very common in high-achieving individuals, which is why we're talking about today on the Premier Mindset. This is what we help people do. I've had this situation happen with fighters, like boxers or MMA fighters, where they will get to a place of thinking that they're untouchable, that they just can't be beat. And then they have their first loss. And now it shatters that entire idea that I can't lose, I'm unbeatable. And then their performance just dips and drops because that identity is tied to it. So we have to rebuild an identity then that's not connected to the performance, that's just about them as a person. And then we can build up all these skills and talents and continue to grow because who they are and what they're able to do hasn't changed. It's about their belief in their abilities that has changed. And when things go wrong, we got to remind ourselves mistakes are just data, it's not danger. We can't look at these things as threats because you won't grow if you look at them as threats. They're just information to let you know what to work on and what to get better at. So a couple questions before we get out of here. I want you guys to think about, I want you guys to write them down, answer them on your own and reflect honestly. And then I want you guys to send them to me so I can, connect with you guys, give you guys some answers to those issues you might be dealing with and some things you can start working on right now today for free. Just reach out. First question, what am I actually trying to control? What is going on? What am I trying to control? Is it a certain thing at work? Is it something in my relationship? If it's something with my daily routine, is it something else? Going further with that, second question, what would happen if I didn't? What would happen if you didn't control that thing? If you let go of control? Would the world burn down? Would something fall apart? Would you get evicted? Like, what would happen if you stopped controlling that thing? Let's look at the actual fears. And then what am I afraid will happen if I let go? So kind of going further into that, of if I truly did let go, what am I afraid is that going to lead to? So that might be on the second question that you're worried about. If I don't, answer this email in time, then I'll get fired and I'll have to look for a new job. So what am I afraid will happen if I let go? It might be more of, I'm not going to be able to find jobs. I'm not going to be able to pay my bills. I'm not going to be able to stay in a house, whatever it is. This is a little bit deeper of like, what is it going to lead to long-term wise, more consequence wise, if you did let go and stop trying to control things. So think about those, reflect on it, send me your answers, let me know what you're thinking. You can reach out on any of the social media sites or email or phone, any of that stuff works great. I want to just hear from you guys. And keep thinking about these things on your own. Resilient minds, premier results. If we can't build ourselves up and build up that mindset, you're not going to reach that level of success because you're going to get in your own way the whole time. Recognition is the first step. We have to see what we're doing and why we're doing it to understand it, and then we can change it and get to work. If you feel like there's anyone out there that you know in life that struggles with control, whether they're controlling too much or control too little, send them this episode, see if it helps them out. We're trying to spread the awareness of this and get it to as many people as we can to help benefit them in as many ways as we can. So make sure to send it around if you want to. We'd love to get more people involved and help people get the information they need to be successful. If you yourself found any benefit in this, leave us a review. The reviews help us spread our reach and get to more people and show it to more people, which is our goal again. And we love hearing back from you guys about what's working, what's not, what you like, and anything that we could fix on our end. So if there are things that you would like to hear more of or you like to go differently, let us know. We love staying connected. I make it a point to give you actionable tools to find success in your life. So I want to know how it's going, what's happening, and if it's working or not. I don't want you guys spending your time doing things that aren't working. So if you guys find things that aren't helpful or not useful, let me know so I don't have to keep including these things because I don't want to take your time with things that aren't being useful. We want to maximize this stuff because I know you all got very busy lives. And I just like staying connected. So even if you just want to have someone to talk to, reach out. I'd love to talk with you guys and just hear how things are going, whether that's successes or failures or just feeling lost. I'm here for you guys. There's a lot of different ways you can reach out. You can reach out through email at tmailer@premierperformancereno.com. My last name spelled Mahler. You can text or call me directly, 775-561-0056. We have the Instagram and the TikTok with the same name for both of those, which are both premier_performance_Reno. So get involved, get into those communities. We have the Facebook page and the LinkedIn page with the same name for both of those. Premier Performance LLC for both of that. And then the Twitter or X account, which is at Premier Reno LLC. And finally, our website, www.premierperformancereno.com. where we are posting more and more things. It's kind of our main hub for everything. And on top of that, we are going to keep on posting our services, testimonials, research, everything that might be helpful for you as you move forward in your journey. Next week, we're going to go over the comfort zone, what that is, how it looks, how to grow it, what issues come from staying in it too long, and everything in between. Comfort zone is a great place to be, but living there 100% of the time is going to cause issues. So we're going to dive into that fully, see what we can find, see what more we can give you guys as we keep going, as we're going to put out new episodes every Sunday, and we're going to keep it going with new clips coming out on all the social media accounts on a daily basis. So make sure to get into those communities, get involved. We're just going to keep growing that stuff, and we love you guys to get involved on the ground floor and not as it builds into something big. So reach out, let me know what's going on. I want to be a resource for you guys. But other than that, I hope you have a great week. I hope you enjoy yourself. Go have some fun. Put yourself out there and do something that scares you a little bit. And if there's any issues, you just say the word and we will fix it. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week as we keep going. And I hope you have a great time. Talk soon.